So, you smell that? It smells like a bit goblin. Today, we're going to look at the first 5 apps that I install after installing a fresh copy of Windows, or really any other operating system like Linux or one of the BSDs. Although there is some overlap, these are not necessarily the most useful apps for me, but simply the first apps that I reach for after installing a fresh operating system for my personal use. Of course, this won't encompass everything, and some of these apps may not be entirely relevant for a business workstation or a server. Again, these are focused around my personal machines. So, maybe you've just built or purchased your first system and are setting it up for the first time, or maybe you're a veteran and have installed Windows a million times before and are just looking for new ways to change up your usual process. Whatever your reason, I find discussions like this to be both entertaining and informational, and with as much attention as we give to the hardware side of our PC builds, I think it's also important to pay attention to the software side a little bit, as that can have just as much, if not more of an impact on our everyday use of our systems. Real quick, if you're interested in any of the software I mentioned in this video, feel free to head to the video description to find links to their respective websites to download them. The first item I have on this list is Firefox. I use Firefox literally every single day to do various things like check my Gmail, write and edit notes in Google Keep, and watch YouTube videos. And the main reason I do this first is because if I'm going to be navigating the web and downloading a bunch of software installers, I may as well be using a web browser that I'm more fluent and comfortable with. Firefox is my home, and the faster that I can get to it, the better. Now I realize that these days, Edge is fine, but I'm used to the days of Internet Explorer and the early days of Microsoft Edge, where navigating the web and downloading files really wasn't that great. With all that being said, this applies to whatever browser that you prefer, Chrome, Opera, Vivaldi, it really doesn't matter. Personally, I just stick with Firefox because Firefox is open source, and these days Firefox is about on par with Google Chrome's performance, and I trust Mozilla's business practices a little more than I do with Google. Although not by much, because Mozilla has had their own missteps over the years. Next up on this list are game launchers. When I put this item on this list, I was initially thinking about Steam and Battle.net, as those are what I personally use, but everyone will have their own collection of games across various platforms, so I'm bundling these all into one that can include others like Epic Game Store and Uplay. As a gamer, this is really the most important step, as this is why you chose to build or buy your computer in the first place. If you need to download lots of games, and especially if you want to get started gaming immediately after setting up your computer, you'll want to get this started as early as possible. And if you're like me and you could spend about an hour setting up your computer, then that's an hour more of game downloads that you can get through. Although do note that you may want to limit your bandwidth usage while downloading games, just to leave yourself a little bit of room while downloading other software. Third on my list is Thunderbird. I need my email, and the sooner I can get up and running with my email, the better. Unfortunately, Gmail doesn't seem to have too good of third-party app support, as it has a lot of proprietary functionality tied into the web interface. But since I switched to Fastmail for my personal and BitGoblin emails, which, by the way, does require you to pay for it, Thunderbird's been a great email client. This is a bit off topic, but I really like it when services use open standards, and allow you to use other third-party clients if you so choose. Paid or unpaid, it is still a viable business plan to be open and permissive, and to give your customers choice. Funny concept, right? Anyways, back to Thunderbird. It's free and open source, and I trust the developers behind it. I'm not sure if and how Mozilla are still involved with it, but either way, I love it. Fourth on my list are the OnlyOffice document editors, and really this can be any document suite of your choice. LibreOffice used to take hold of this step for me for many years, although recently I discovered OnlyOffice, and at least in my experience, it seems to handle Microsoft Office documents a little better than LibreOffice. It looks great, in my opinion. It has all the usual editors that you would expect for text documents, spreadsheets, and presentation slides, and it seems to be a good, free, open source alternative to Microsoft Office, although you will want to use Microsoft Office if you require 100% compatibility with those file formats, and it even runs on Linux. They provide both native packages and Flatpak package for whichever way you prefer to install software. Do note that scaling does seem a little weird in OnlyOffice. It doesn't seem to pick up fractional scaling values that well, as on my monitor, set to 125% scaling, OnlyOffice jumps all the way up to 2 times scaling. It's really not game breaking, but I can see it being a nuisance if you need that extra space. And the last item on this list is Visual Studio Code. I personally don't do a whole lot of coding anymore, but I do still use it a lot for editing text and configuration files as needed. For a text editor, it's pretty extensible if you do lots of coding. There's even an extension for syncing your settings and extensions across multiple devices. And in my opinion, it looks a bit better and is a bit more noob-friendly than Vim or Nano. It's not really the lightest weight of text editors, and if you really want that, you can look at Sublime Text, as it's not based off of web technologies and JavaScript. But Visual Studio Code is quite a bit snappier than Atom, at least when I last used Atom about 3 or 4 years ago. And for me, is a nice balance between being snappy and lightweight and being extensible and feature-rich. Now, Visual Studio Code is developed by Microsoft, and the builds provided by Microsoft will track you. I won't go over how to disable all the tracking and stuff in this video, but if you're so inclined, you can head to Google, and I'm sure you'll be able to find some instructions on how to do so. Like I said earlier, these apps aren't necessarily the most useful apps of mine, but the first apps that I reached for when setting up a new system. I personally like to get a head start on configuring all my settings and default apps and such, so I'm not waiting for like an app to install when I need it, or worrying about what app will open up which type of file down the road. Everything on this list supports Mac, Linux, and FreeBSD, excluding some of the game launchers depending on the platform, and Visual Studio Code, the last that I checked, does not support FreeBSD, although that's more of a Chromium issue than anything else. Now that we've gone through mine, let me know in the comment section below the apps that you install first when you set up your systems. That's actually going to wrap it up for this video, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you'll like the video, subscribe to the channel, watch one of the videos down below, or just do whatever it is you need to do to make yourself feel happy. Either way, I will catch you in the next one.